Commander Draken challenged the human security chief to prove her strength. 30 seconds later, he couldn't feel the left side of his body. Draken stood at the observation deck of Station Meridian, all four arms crossed in what his species considered the ultimate display of skepticism. His crimson scales caught the light from the nearby star, making him look like a walking, talking ember. And honestly, he felt just as hot-headed. "They are sending humans," his second-in-command, Vec, announced from behind him. The younger Vexillian's voice carried that unmistakable tone of amusement, the kind you use when someone tells you they are bringing a pet to a war council. "Humans." Draken let the word roll off his forked tongue like it tasted bad. Which, in his opinion, it did. The galaxy's most overrated species. He had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. Humans this, humans that. Humans somehow survived their death world and now they think they are tough. Please. Draken had fought in 22 campaigns across 11 star systems. He wore the Crimson Mark of Valor, the highest military honor his people could bestow. He had personally defeated a Chromoth Berserker in single combat, and those things were 3 times his size and made of what could only be described as angry muscle and bad attitude. Yet somehow these soft-skinned, short-lived mammals had the entire Galactic Council tripping over themselves to accommodate them. "The diplomatic vessel is docking now," Vec informed him, pulling up the station feed on his wrist display. "Standard human crew. 20 individuals. Security detail included." Security detail. Draken snorted, which, coming from a species with 4 nostrils, sounded particularly dramatic. "What are they securing?" "Their lunch boxes." Vec chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Commander, you really should read the briefings." "I read them." Draken lied. He had skimmed them. Maybe the parts that were not boring anyway. "Humans are fragile. Their bones break easily. They need constant temperature regulation or they die. They require sleep every single day, sometimes for a third of their entire cycle. They are biological disasters held together by audacity and caffeine." "The reports do mention the caffeine thing quite a bit," Vec admitted. Draken turned from the viewport, his tail swishing behind him in agitation. Among his people, the Vexillians, strength was everything. Not just physical strength, though that mattered plenty, but strength of will, strength of honor, strength of purpose. Warriors were the backbone of their society. The ones who made the hard decisions, who protected the weak, who faced down the darkness between stars without flinching. Humans, from everything he had read, glossed over, and heard secondhand, were none of those things. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, arriving only 70 years ago with their primitive fusion drives and their embarrassingly young civilization. They had no warrior caste, no formal combat training from birth, no centuries-old martial traditions. They had what? Movies. Television. Something called football that was apparently not even played with feet most of the time. It was insulting, really. The council treating them like equals. "I want to meet the security chief," Draken announced suddenly, making a decision that would, in retrospect, rank among his top 5 worst ideas ever. Right up there with challenging that plasma eel to a staring contest and eating that thing on Ratchek 7 that was still moving. "Commander," Vec's head tilted with concern. "You heard me. When they disembark, I want to meet their head of security. Face to face. I want to see what passes for a warrior among these creatures." Vec hesitated, his claws tapping against his datapad in that nervous way he had. "Sir, the diplomatic protocols specifically request that we maintain professional courtesy and avoid any, and I am quoting here, dominance displays or physical posturing." "I am not posturing," Draken said, posturing aggressively. "I am simply curious about our guests." Is curiosity against protocol? When you get curious, things tend to catch fire. That was one time. And that ambassador had it coming. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud that resonated through the station's superstructure. Draken felt it in his bones, that satisfying metallic sound of connection. The human vessel, he had to admit, was not bad looking. Sleek design, efficient lines, none of the overcomplicated nonsense that some species slapped onto their ships. But looking good and being good were 2 very different things. "They are opening the airlock," Vec reported. Draken straightened to his full height, which was impressive by anyone's standards. 2.5 meters of scaled muscle, combat training, and poorly concealed arrogance. He flexed all 4 arms in sequence, a warm-up routine that had intimidated countless opponents. "Let us go welcome our guests," he said, his voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that probably should have been a warning sign to everyone involved. It was not. The human security chief was not what Draken expected. Which, given that he had spent the walk to the docking bay imagining some trembling, oversized child in an ill-fitting uniform, was probably for the best. Nina Chen stood about 1.7 meters tall, which by human standards was apparently average, and by Vexillian standards was adorably tiny. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard blue and gray uniform of Earth's Diplomatic Security Service. No visible weapons, unless you counted the data pad magnetically attached to her belt. She looked, and Draken could not stress this enough, completely and utterly unbothered by everything around her. "Commander Draken," the human ambassador was saying, a tall male named Richard Hayes, who had the kind of smile that made you want to count your fingers after shaking hands. "Thank you for hosting us on Station Meridian. This is Officer Nina Chen, head of our security detail." Nina nodded once. Just once. Like she was acknowledging a weather report, not meeting one of the most decorated warriors in this sector. Draken felt his scales ripple with annoyance. "Officer Chen," he said, intentionally using the title like it was something he found on the bottom of his boot. "I trust your journey was not too taxing for your delicate constitution." "Nope," Nina said. Pop at the end, like she was talking about lunch options. "It was fine. Fine." Draken repeated the word like he was tasting it. "Still bad." "How nice." "You know, Officer Chen, on my world, security chiefs are warriors. True warriors. Tested in combat from the age of 5 cycles. We earn our positions through strength, skill, and blood." "Cool," Nina said, which was apparently human for, "I am listening but do not actually care even a little bit." The ambassador coughed. "Commander, perhaps we could proceed to the conference room and—" "I am curious," Draken interrupted, taking a step closer to Nina. She did not step back. Points for that, he supposed. Stupid points, but points. How does one become a security chief among humans? Is there a test? Or do you simply volunteer and hope nobody notices? Vec made a small distressed sound behind him. The kind of sound that translated roughly to, "Please stop talking, oh ancestors, please stop." Nina looked up at Draken with eyes that were dark brown and carried about as much concern as a rock. "There is a test, actually. Physical fitness, combat training, tactical assessment, psychological evaluation. Pretty standard stuff." "Combat training." Draken laughed. And it was not a nice laugh. It was the laugh of someone about to make a terrible decision and absolutely commit to it. "Officer Chen, I have trained in 20 different martial disciplines. I have fought beings twice my size and 3 times my ferocity. I have quite literally crushed enemies beneath my feet." "Neat," Nina said. That single word, delivered with such profound disinterest, shattered what little restraint Draken had left. "I challenge you," he declared, loud enough that every species within 20 meters turned to look. "Formal combat. Single engagement. First to yield or fall. Right here, right now." The docking bay went very, very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when everyone simultaneously realizes they are about to witness either something amazing or something horrible, and possibly both. Ambassador Hayes opened his mouth, probably to say something diplomatic and calming. But Nina held up one hand, stopping him. "Sure," she said. Just like that. "Sure." Like he had asked if she wanted coffee. "Give me a second to stretch." And then, right there in the docking bay, this tiny human woman bent forward and touched her toes. Just casual stretching, the kind you do before a light jog, not before facing a decorated Vexillian warrior in combat. "This is going to be over in seconds," someone in the growing crowd muttered. The Sien merchant, 3-eyed and eager for gossip. "Poor human does not know what she got herself into," added a Furillian trader, her tentacles quivering with anticipation. Vec moved closer to Draken. "Commander, this is a mistake." "Nonsense." Draken was already moving toward the station's designated combat arena, a reinforced space used for settling disputes the old-fashioned way. Apparently, every space station in the galaxy had that one room where people could legally beat each other up. This will be educational for everyone involved. The crowd followed, growing with each intersection they passed. Word spread fast on a space station. Within minutes, it seemed like half the station's population had found reasons to suddenly be very interested in the arena level. The arena itself was a circular space 15 meters in diameter, with impact-absorbing floors and energy barriers to protect the spectators. The lights automatically brightened as they entered, sensors detecting imminent violence the way smoke detectors sense fire. Draken stepped into the center, cracked all 4 sets of knuckles in sequence, and felt that familiar pre-combat focus settle over him like a second skin. This was what he was built for. This was what 70 years of training had prepared him for. Nina stepped in across from him, rolled her shoulders once, twice, and then just stood there waiting. Relaxed. Like she was in line at a grocery store, not facing down a warrior who outweighed her by at least 80 kilograms. Begin when ready, the station's AI announced in that board, seen it all voice that all station AI seemed to develop after a few decades. Draken smiled, showing all his teeth. Any last words, Officer Chen? Nina tilted her head slightly. You sure about this? Oh, he was sure. He was absolutely, completely, catastrophically sure. Draken launched himself forward with the kind of speed that had earned him 3 medals and a reputation for ending fights before they started. His primary right arm swung in a devastating arc aimed at where Nina's center mass had been approximately half a second ago. Emphasis on had been. The human was not there anymore. She had simply, and this was the part that started to bother him immediately, stepped to the side. Not dramatically, not with some fancy flourish or combat roll. She just moved like someone avoiding a puddle on the sidewalk. "Ha!" someone in the crowd said. Draken spun, his tail whipping around to compensate for his momentum, and threw a combination strike with his secondary arms. Left, right, left again. Each blow capable of denting steel plating. Each one hitting absolutely nothing but air. Nina ducked under the first, leaned away from the second, and the third passed so close to her face that it should have at least made her blink. It did not. She just watched it go by, like watching a bus pass. "Okay," Draken said, breathing slightly heavier than he wanted to admit. "You are quick. Good. This will not be completely boring." Nina did not respond. She just maintained that same relaxed stance, weight slightly forward, hands loose at her sides, waiting. Fine. If speed was not working, strength would. Draken was a warrior of the Vexillian Empire. He had crushed rock with his bare hands. He had torn blast doors from their hinges. He had once, and he was still proud of this, punched a malfunctioning combat drone so hard it had achieved a new orbit. He charged again, all 4 arms extended, intending to grapple and simply overpower her. This was basic tactics. Bigger fighter closes distance, uses mass advantage, ends the fight. Simple. Effective. Foolproof. Nina stepped into his charge. That was his first clue that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with this situation. She did not step back or dodge to the side. She stepped forward, inside his reach. Suddenly, Draken felt something hook behind his leading leg while something else pushed against his chest. Not hard, not with any dramatic force. Just a push. Physics did the rest. His world rotated 90 degrees in a way it absolutely should not have. The impact-absorbing floor rushed up to meet his back with a solid thud that knocked the wind from his lungs and the confidence from his ego. He lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. His brain offered several suggestions: sneak attack, trick floor, station malfunction, divine intervention. None of them made sense, because he had seen exactly what happened. He just could not accept it. Nina appeared in his field of vision, looking down at him with an expression of mild concern. The kind of concern you might have for someone who tripped on a rug. "Should I call someone?" she asked. The crowd had gone absolutely silent. The kind of silence usually reserved for funerals or moments of profound shock. Someone dropped something metal. It rang out like a bell in a cathedral. Draken's pride, which was substantial and had its own gravitational field, reasserted itself. "I slipped," he announced, rolling to his feet with as much dignity as he could salvage. Which was not much, but he was trying. "The floor is slippery." "Ah," Nina said. That universal sound of polite disbelief. Draken steadied himself. His left side was tingling strangely. "Probably nothing." Again. "This time, I will be ready." Nina shrugged. "Your funeral." He came at her with everything. Every technique, every dirty trick, every combat skill he had accumulated over 70 years of dedicated training. He feinted with his upper arms and struck with his lower ones. He used his tail like a fifth limb, sweeping at her legs. He varied his rhythm, changed his angles, attempted grapples and strikes in combinations that should have overwhelmed any opponent. Nina Chen, all 1.7 meters of her, moved through his attacks like water. No, not like water. Water was passive. She was selective. She moved exactly as much as she needed to, not a centimeter more. Every dodge was minimal. Every deflection was precise. She was not fighting him so much as she was declining his invitations to hit her. And then, when he overextended on a particularly aggressive lunge, she did something that would haunt his nightmares for weeks. She poked him. Just extended one finger and poked him in the shoulder. Right on a pressure point he did not even know he had. His entire left side went numb. Both left arms dropped like someone had cut the strings. His leg buckled. And for the second time in 5 minutes, Draken found himself on the floor. This time in a much less dignified heap. "Okay, that was me," Nina admitted, actually sounding a little apologetic. "Sorry." Reflex. Draken tried to stand. His left arms were not responding to commands. Neither was his left leg. He managed to prop himself up on his right side, looking like the galaxy's most pathetic tripod. What did you do?" he managed to gasp. "Nerve strike," Nina said, like that explained anything. "You have a cluster right there. Most species do. It will wear off in a minute, maybe 2. Nerve strike." Draken repeated. "You defeated me with a poke." To be fair, it was a very specific poke. The crowd was no longer silent. They were murmuring, chattering, and in some cases making sounds that might have been laughter. Draken, prone on the arena floor with half his body on temporary vacation, felt his pride crumble into dust and then that dust get stepped on. "I yield," he said quietly. "What was that?" the station AI asked, because of course it needed clarification at this specific moment. "I yield," Draken shouted, or tried to. It came out more like a defeated groan. Match concluded. Victor, Officer Nina Chen of Earth. Nina extended a hand to help him up. Draken stared at it like it might be another attack. Eventually, his right arms reached up and accepted the assistance. She pulled him to his feet with surprising strength, steadying him as sensation slowly, painfully, started returning to his left side. "You good?" she asked. "No," Draken admitted. "I am very much not good." "Yeah," Nina said with what might have been sympathy. "It happens." The crowd began to disperse, conversations already turning to wild speculation and exaggeration. By dinner time, the story would be about how the human had defeated him with a single glance. By tomorrow, legends would be born. Draken stood in the center of the arena, feeling smaller than he ever had in his entire life, and realized with growing horror that he had just learned a very important lesson. He had absolutely no idea what humans were actually capable of. And based on Nina Chen's casual demeanor, neither did anyone else. "Should I call someone?" Nina asked again, this time with what might have been actual concern. "You look kind of pale. Can Vexillians look pale?" "My pride," Draken said weakly. "Call the morgue. I think it just died." The medical team arrived approximately 30 seconds after Draken's pride had finished its death rattle. 2 Plexion medics, all tentacles and concerned chittering, rushed into the arena with scanners and worried expressions. "Commander Draken, please remain still while we assess your injuries," the lead medic said, waving a scanner over his still tingling left side. "I am fine," Draken growled, which was the universal declaration of people who were absolutely not fine but refused to admit it. "I do not need medical attention." "Your nervous system shows significant disruption in the left quadrant," the medic insisted, tentacles typing rapidly on the datapad. We should transport you to the medical bay for observation.
No.
Draken pulled away from the scanner with whatever dignity he could scrape together from the bottom of the barrel.
I am fine.
It is already passing.
See.
He flexed his left arms, which cooperated just enough to not make him a complete liar. Perfectly functional. The medic looked skeptical, which was impressive given that Plexians did not technically have faces. If you experience any numbness, tingling, or loss of motor control, I will come immediately to the medical bay. Draken lied through his teeth. You have my word as a warrior. The medics exchanged glances that clearly said they had heard that particular lie before, but eventually packed up their equipment and left, probably to go write a report about stubborn Vexillians and their allergic reactions to medical care. Vec approached cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded and particularly irritable predator.
Commander, that was...
Do not say it, Draken warned.
I said do not say it.
Nina had moved to the side of the arena and was drinking something from a container that read, Water, Purified, Earth Standard, in 5 languages. She looked like she had just finished a light warm-up, not defeated a decorated warrior in single combat. Draken limped over to her, his pride demanding answers even if his body wanted nothing more than to find a dark room and contemplate his life choices.
How?
He said simply. Nina looked up from her water.
How what?
How did you are half my size. You have 2 arms. I have 4. 4 arms, Officer Chen. Basic mathematics says I should have 1. Math is not really great at fighting, Nina said. Also, I have been training since I was 6. Taekwondo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, boxing, and about 4 other systems whose names you probably can't pronounce. Plus the standard diplomatic security combat program, which is, let us just say, thorough. You have trained your entire life.
Sure.
But here is the thing. Nina took another sip of water.
You trained on a planet with what?
0.7 standard gravity. 0.68, Draken corrected automatically.
Right.
Earth is 1.0 standard gravity. I have been working out against stronger resistance my entire life. Every step I take, I am basically doing strength training compared to you. Plus, our bone density is higher. Our muscle attachment points are more efficient. And we evolved from persistence hunters. We are built to keep going when everything else quits. Draken felt something in his worldview crack. But the briefing said humans were fragile.
We are,
Nina agreed.
We die easy.
Temperature extremes kill us. We need oxygen constantly. We are vulnerable to like 1,000 different diseases. But fragile and weak are not the same thing. We are fragile like, I don't know, a really tough piece of glass. Hard to break in the right direction. But yeah, we have weaknesses. This is insane, Draken muttered.
You want to hear insane?
A voice called from the dispersing crowd. The Phexian merchant who had predicted Nina's quick defeat approached, all 3 eyes wide. I once saw a human fall down a full flight of stairs. Hit every single step. Then got up and apologized to the stairs. To the stairs. Like the stairs had feelings. A Frillian trader added, tentacles waving excitedly. I sold goods on Earth once. Their planet tried to kill me 17 different ways. The air was too thick. The gravity was crushing. Something called pollen tried to suffocate me. And the humans, they were just walking around like it was pleasant. Pleasant. I employed a human cargo handler once, Vec admitted quietly. He loaded containers that normally required 3 of us, by himself. While humming. I thought he was using a mechanical assist. He paused. He was not. He was just that strong. More aliens gathered, apparently eager to share their own human-related trauma. They eat poison for fun, someone said. I saw one run 20 kilometers because they were bored. One of them told me they climb mountains during their vacation time. Mountains. For recreation. They have a sport where they punch each other in the face repeatedly, and people pay to watch. Draken listened to this growing list of human absurdities with the expression of someone watching their entire understanding of the universe collapse in real time. Your planet, he said slowly, turning back to Nina. Your planet made you this way. Pretty much, Nina agreed. Earth is kind of a nightmare world by galactic standards. We have weather that can kill you, animals that want to kill you, plants that can kill you, and geography that is actively trying to kill you. We got tough because we had to. Natural selection is not gentle. And you just live there. Happily. Well, we complain about it a lot, Nina admitted. But yeah, it's home. Draken sat down right there on the arena floor, all four arms hanging limply. I need to rethink everything. Take your time, Nina said, not unkindly. It's a lot to process. Most species go through this eventually. You're actually taking it pretty well. Last guy challenged me to a rematch immediately. Lost again, and then tried to challenge me to a third match while still unconscious. It was awkward. There was a guy before me. Commander, there is always a guy before you. Somewhere in the back of Draken's mind, his pride tried to rally one last time, suggesting that maybe, possibly, this was all a fluke and he could win a rematch. The rest of his brain, the parts that had just experienced being poked into submission, told his pride to sit down and be quiet. For once, his pride listened. 3 days later, Draken found himself doing something he never thought he would do. He was hiding. Not from an enemy, not from danger, but from his own embarrassment, which had proven far more persistent than any physical opponent. The station's gymnasium was on level 7, a facility designed to accommodate multiple species and their various fitness requirements. Draken had been walking past, minding his own business and definitely not brooding, when he heard something that made him stop. Laughter. Human laughter. His curiosity, which had already gotten him into enough trouble for one lifetime, dragged him to the observation window. What he saw made him question reality all over again. There were 5 humans in the gym. Nina was there, along with 4 members of her security team. They were doing something the display screen labeled as circuit training, which sounded innocent enough until you watched what it actually involved. One human, a broad-shouldered male named Torres according to his uniform, was lifting weights that Draken recognized as the heavy-grade equipment, the kind designed for Chromoth and other high-density species. Torres was doing repetitions. Multiple repetitions. While carrying on a conversation about something called taco recipes. No, you have got to try the fish tacos, he was saying, not even breathing hard. The mango salsa makes all the difference. A smaller female, Chen, was running on a treadmill set to a speed that would have qualified as sprinting for most species. She had been running for, Draken checked the display timer, 47 minutes. 47 minutes without stopping, while reading something on a datapad. I am just saying, Chen called over to Torres between breaths, mango is overrated. Pineapple salsa is where it's at. Pineapple is a pizza crime, another human, Rodriguez, said from where he was doing something called pull-ups. He hung from a bar and lifted his entire body weight up and down, over and over, like gravity was a suggestion he was choosing to ignore. We have been over this. Nina was in the corner working through a series of movements that looked like combat forms. Precise, controlled, and fast. Very fast. She transitioned from kicks to punches to what looked like grappling moves against an imaginary opponent. Draken realized with growing horror that he recognized several of the techniques. She had used them on him. This was her warm-up routine. Her warm-up routine. The door to the gym slid open, and Draken realized too late that he had been standing directly in front of it. Vec emerged, looking unusually exhausted, and nearly walked into him. "Commander," Vec wheezed, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question," Draken said, noting his second's elevated breathing and slightly trembling legs. "I attempted to join the humans in their workout," Vec admitted. "I lasted 12 minutes before my ancestors started calling me home." 12 minutes. It was the longest 12 minutes of my life, sir. The humans had noticed them now. Nina walked over, barely glistening with what humans apparently called sweat. She was drinking that same water container, looking like she could go another 3 hours without breaking. Well, breaking more of a sweat. "Commander Draken," she said with a small smile. "Vec mentioned you might stop by. Come to watch the show." "I was passing by," Draken said, which fooled absolutely nobody. "Uh-huh. Want to join us? We are just doing a light session today." Draken looked past her at Torres, who was now lifting with one arm what Draken usually needed 2 arms to manage.
That is light.
Well, light for us, Nina admitted. We can scale it down if you want to give it a try. Every instinct Draken had screamed at him to decline, to preserve what microscopic amount of dignity he had left. But there was something in Nina's expression. Not mockery, not challenge. Just an offer. A genuine offer. I suppose, he said slowly, I could observe for educational purposes. Sure, Nina said, and that smile got a little wider. Educational. She led him into the gym, where the other humans paused their various activities to offer greetings. They were polite, friendly even. And not one of them mentioned the incident from 3 days ago, which somehow made it worse, because Draken knew they all knew, and they were being kind about it. Humans being kind was somehow more unsettling than humans being threatening. So, Nina said, guiding him to a section with adjustable equipment, want to try some basic exercises? Nothing crazy. Just enough to get a feel for how we train.
And if I fail miserably?
Then you fail miserably, Nina said with a shrug. Everyone does it first time. Torres threw up his first week of basic training. Chen pulled a muscle trying to keep up with the running requirements. Rodriguez, tell him what happened during your first sparring session. Rodriguez, still doing those impossible pull-ups, grinned. Got my nose broken in 3 places. Cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. We all start somewhere, Nina continued. The difference is not where you start, it's whether you keep going. Draken looked at the equipment, then at the humans, then back at the equipment. His pride, battered but apparently not dead, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity. Not to prove he was better, because that ship had sailed, crashed, and sunk to the bottom of the metaphorical ocean. But to understand. To learn. To maybe stop being the idiot who thought he knew everything. All right, he said. Show me. Nina's smile turned into a full grin. Fair warning, this is going to suck.
I assumed as much.
Want to make it interesting? If you can complete the light circuit, I will give you that rematch you have been thinking about. Friendly sparring. No stakes. Just practice. Draken's eyes widened slightly. How did you know I was thinking about a rematch? Commander, Nina said, patting his shoulder with one hand, everyone thinks about a rematch. It's human nature. She paused. Well, probably everyone nature. Pride is pretty universal. A rematch, Draken repeated, testing the word. Not as an enemy. As a training partner. If you can hang with us for 1 session. Draken extended his primary right arm. Nina shook it, her grip firm and confident. Deal, he said. And meant it. 2 hours later, Draken was fairly certain he was dying. But in a good way. Possibly. The light circuit had turned out to be anything but light. Running, lifting, crawling, climbing, movements he had never trained for, muscles he did not know he had, all pushed to their limits. And the humans had done it all while talking. About food. About sports. About something called reality television that sounded absolutely made up. Nina had matched him step for step, never pushing ahead, never falling behind, always there with a correction or encouragement. She was not competing with him. She was teaching him. When the circuit finally ended, Draken collapsed against the gym wall, all 4 arms splayed out, breathing like he had just run a marathon through a volcano. Not bad, Nina said, settling down beside him. She was barely breathing hard. You lasted the whole thing. I feel as though I have been stepped on by something very large. That's the feeling of getting stronger. It sucks, but it works. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the other humans continued their exercises, occasionally glancing over with expressions that Draken now recognized as approval. Can I ask you something? He said after his lungs remembered how to function. Sure. Why are humans so good at this? At fighting, at surviving, at enduring. Your people have only been in space for 70 years. Most species take centuries to develop warrior traditions. You had them before you left your planet. Nina took a long drink from her water container before answering. You want the short version or the long version? I have time. And honestly, I need the rest. Nina smiled at that. All right. So, Earth, beautiful planet, right? Oceans, forests, mountains, all that good stuff. Also absolutely trying to murder us every single day for about 300,000 years. 300,000, give or take. Draken stared. We evolved during ice ages. Survived megafauna that thought we looked delicious. Dealt with diseases that should have wiped us out. Lived through climate shifts that killed off most other species. We did not have claws or armor or venom or really any natural weapons. We had endurance, intelligence, and spite. Draken laughed despite himself. Spite. So much spite. Humans are persistence hunters. You know what that means? It means when we wanted to eat something, we did not ambush it or overpower it. We just followed it for hours. Sometimes days. We walked after it until it literally collapsed from exhaustion. Then we ate it. That is horrifying. That is Tuesday. Nina corrected. We climbed to the top of the food chain by being too stubborn to die. And then, because apparently we got bored, we started fighting each other. Wars, battles, conflicts over land, resources, ideologies, religion, you name it. Thousands of years of humans perfecting the art of hurting other humans. She pulled up something on her datapad, showing him images. Battlefields. Armies. Warriors from different eras of human history. We studied war like it was a science, she continued. Every civilization developed fighting styles. The Greeks had their phalanxes. The Romans their legions. The Mongols their cavalry tactics. The Japanese their samurai. The Europeans their knights. We wrote entire books on strategy. Sun Tzu. Clausewitz. Musashi. Fighting was not just survival for us, it was culture. Draken stared at the images. Humans in armor. Humans with weapons. Humans facing down enemies with nothing but determination and very poor life expectancy. And then we got to space, Nina said. And everyone assumed that because we were new, we were weak. But we brought all of that with us. 300,000 years of survival instinct packed into diplomatic vessels and security protocols. You are terrifying, Draken said quietly. We are adaptable, Nina corrected gently. There is a difference. Put us in any environment. Give us any challenge. We will figure out how to survive it. Not because we are better than other species, but because quitting is not really in our vocabulary. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, other station residents went about their business, probably not realizing they were walking past a Vexillian warrior having his entire worldview reconstructed. I owe you an apology, Draken said finally. For what? For underestimating your people. For arrogance. For assuming that strength only looks one way. Nina bumped her shoulder against his arm. Apology accepted. And for what it's worth, you are not the first, and you will not be the last. Most species go through this. The important thing is what you do after you learn the lesson. What do you suggest? Stop measuring strength by size or tradition. Start measuring it by results. Your people are warriors. So are mine. Different methods, same goal. She paused. Maybe there is something we can learn from each other. Draken considered this. His people, the proud Vexillians with their centuries of martial tradition, learning from humans who had been in space for barely a lifetime. A month ago, the idea would have been insulting. Now, it seemed like the smartest thing anyone had suggested in years. I would like that, he said. Good. Nina stood, offering him a hand up. Because tomorrow we are doing the full circuit. No modifications. I am going to die. Probably. But you will die learning. Draken took her hand and pulled himself to his feet. His body screamed in protest. His pride, once shattered, was slowly being reforged into something new, something that understood that strength came in unexpected forms. Same time tomorrow, he asked. Nina grinned. Would not miss it. She walked back to her team, already calling out instructions for the next rotation. Draken watched her go, this small, soft-skinned creature who had defeated him with a single finger and then offered to teach him how to be better. He had come to Station Meridian expecting to be impressed by nothing. He was leaving with a list of things he needed to rethink. And a training partner he never saw coming. 6 weeks later, Draken stood at the same observation deck where this entire humbling experience had begun. Vec approached, looking concerned. "Commander, Ambassador Hayes is asking about the joint training program you proposed. The Council wants details." "Tell them it is approved," Draken said, watching a human shuttle dock with the same casual precision he had come to associate with their species. "Vexillian warriors will train with human security forces. Cultural exchange, mutual improvement, all that diplomatic language they love."
"Sir, some of the other commanders are skeptical. Let them be skeptical." Draken turned to face his second.
And there was something different in his expression now. Not arrogance. Confidence.
The kind that came from genuine understanding.
"Tell them I said this. Humans are not our enemies. They are not our inferiors. They are survivors from a death world who clawed their way to the stars through pure determination. And if we are smart, we will learn from them before someone else does."
"That is quite the endorsement, sir. It is earned."
Draken flexed all 4 arms, feeling the new strength there, the techniques he had learned, the perspective he had gained. "Besides, Vec, someone needs to warn the rest of the galaxy."
"Warn them about what?"
Draken smiled.
And it was genuine.
"If you challenge a human to single combat, you should definitely call someone afterwards. Because you are going to need medical attention, ego repair, and possibly a complete re-evaluation of your life choices."
"Speaking from experience, Commander?"
"Extensive, painful, humbling experience." Draken confirmed.
"The best kind."
Below them, the human delegation began to disembark. Draken spotted Nina among them, already scanning the area with that casual vigilance that he now recognized as constant situational awareness. She looked up, saw him watching, and offered a small wave.
He waved back with all 4 arms.
Some lessons he had learned were worth the embarrassment. And some species, regardless of size or history or how absolutely terrifying their home planet was, were worth respecting.
The humans had taught him that,
along with 17 new ways to hit the floor. But that was beside the point. The joint training program's first session was scheduled for 0600 station time. Draken arrived at 0545, determined not to be late. The gymnasium was already occupied. Nina was there, running through her forms. The same movements he had seen before, but now he understood what he was watching.
This was not just exercise. This was meditation.
Every motion precise, every transition seamless. She was not warming up. She was centering herself. "You are early," she said without stopping.
"So are you. I live here. It does not count."
She completed her sequence and turned to face him. "Ready for your first official training session, Commander? I have been training for 70 years.
"Sure.
But have you been training with us?" She gestured to the gym. 4 other humans had arrived: Torres, Chen, Rodriguez, and a new face, a woman named Park. All of them wore the same relaxed, focused expression that Draken was beginning to recognize. "Today," Nina continued, "we are going to work on something your species does not have a word for."
"What is that?"
"Falling." Draken blinked.
"I know how to fall."
"You know how to fall in low gravity. You know how to fall when you are the biggest thing on the battlefield. You do not know how to fall when the ground is trying to kill you." She stepped onto the mat and dropped, not collapsed, not stumbled, but deliberately fell into a roll that brought her back to her feet in one smooth motion. "Earth gravity," she said. "We learned this as children. Playgrounds, sports, just being clumsy. Falling is not failure. Falling is data. The ground tells you something about your balance, your weight distribution, your center. If you listen, you learn." Draken stepped onto the mat. It felt firmer than he expected, designed to mimic Earth's higher gravity. "Now you try," Nina said. For the next hour, Draken fell.
Again and again and again.
Each time, Nina or one of the other humans was there with a correction. "Keep your chin tucked. Roll across your shoulder, not your spine. Let the momentum carry you, do not fight it." His body ached. His pride ached more. But slowly, something began to click. The falls became less painful. The rolls became smoother. By the end of the session, he could drop from standing and return to his feet without using his arms. "Not bad," Nina said. "For a beginner." "I am not a—" Draken caught himself. "Actually, in this, I suppose I am. First step to getting good at something is being bad at it. You showed up. That is more than most." She handed him a water container. He drank. It tasted terrible, which meant it was working. "What's next?" he asked. "Next." Nina grinned. "Next, we teach you how to get hit." The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm Draken had not experienced since his earliest combat training. Mornings in the gym, learning human techniques. Afternoons studying human history, the wars, the philosophies, the strange cultural artifacts they called memes. Evenings sparring with Nina and her team. He lost. A lot. Every session, in fact. But the losses changed. The first week, he could not land a single touch. The second week, he managed to block 3 strikes before being put on the ground. The third week, he actually made Nina adjust her stance. "You are learning," she said after that session, rubbing her shoulder where he had landed a solid hit. "Still slow. Still predictable. But learning. Compliments from you sound like criticism. That is because you are not used to honest feedback. Your people tell each other they are great when they are not. We tell each other the truth. It hurts. Then you get better." Draken considered this. "Your species is strange. We know." Nina sat down beside him against the gym wall. "But here is the thing, Commander. Your people have been conquering for centuries. You measure success by how many enemies you defeat. We measure success by how many times we get back up. Same result. Different philosophy. You fight to win. We fight to survive. When you are fighting to survive, there is no such thing as a fair fight. There is only what works." Draken looked at his 4 arms, his weapons, his pride, his identity. "And what works for humans? Whatever is necessary." Nina's voice was quiet. "We do not have claws or venom or 4 arms. We have each other. We have stubbornness. We have 300,000 years of practice at not dying. And we have this." She tapped her head. "The ability to look at a problem and find a solution that no one else has considered. Like poking someone in the shoulder until their nervous system gives up." "Exactly. That was not strength. That was anatomy. I knew where your nerves were because I studied. I practiced. I failed 100 times before I got it right." She looked at him. "You could learn it too. If you wanted." Draken was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the gym was emptying. The other humans had finished their workouts and were heading out, calling goodbyes. "Teach me," he said finally. Nina's smile was small but genuine. "I was hoping you would say that." The rematch came on a rainy evening, simulated rain, because Station Meridian had weather systems for species who needed humidity, and someone had set them to London. Nina and Draken faced each other in the arena. No crowd this time. Just the 2 of them, the hum of the environmental systems, and the soft patter of artificial rain. "Rules?" Draken asked. "Same as before. First to yield or fall." But this time, Nina settled into her stance. "Do not hold back. I was not holding back last time. I know. That is what made it sad." Draken lunged. Not with the wild aggression of their first encounter, but with control. Precision. He had learned to read her movements, to anticipate her angles. His strikes were faster now, his footwork more grounded. Nina dodged, weaved, deflected. But this time, she had to work for it. He caught her wrist, once, and for a fraction of a second, he saw something in her eyes. Not fear. Approval. Then she twisted free, dropped under his guard, and poked him in the same pressure point. His left side went numb. Again. He hit the floor. Again. But this time he laughed. Genuinely, deeply laughed. The kind of laugh that came from understanding rather than humiliation. "I felt that coming," he said from the mat. "I knew exactly what you were going to do. And I still could not stop it." "Progress," Nina said, offering him a hand up. Next time, you will block it. Next time. She pulled him to his feet. Commander, you are going to train with us until you can beat me. However long that takes. And if it takes years, then years. She released his hand and stepped back. Like I said, we do not quit. Draken looked at his 4 arms, then at her too. The galaxy was full of species who measured strength by size and tradition. But here, in this small gym on a station at the edge of nowhere, he had found a different measure. Same time tomorrow, he asked. Nina nodded. Same time tomorrow. The rain continued to fall. The station hummed. And somewhere in the vast machinery of galactic civilization, a Vexillian warrior and a human security chief began to build something neither of them had expected. Friendship, respect, and a shared understanding that the floor was cold, but getting back up was always worth it. 3 months after the first challenge, Draken stood in the arena again. This time, there was a crowd. Not the rowdy, bloodthirsty mob from before, but a gathering of warriors, diplomats, and station personnel who had heard the rumors and come to see for themselves. A Vexillian commander had been training with humans. Not just training, learning, changing. The word had spread. Ready? Nina asked from across the mat. She wore the same blue and gray uniform, the same calm expression. Nothing about her had changed. Everything about her had changed, in Draken's eyes. I am ready, he said. They circled each other. The crowd held its breath. Draken moved first, not charging, not lunging. He stepped forward with precision, his 4 arms positioned not for overwhelming force but for control. Nina dodged left. He anticipated it. His lower right arm swept toward her midsection. She blocked. His upper left followed. She ducked. But this time, she was not just dodging. She was being moved. Draken had learned. Not just techniques, he had learned to read the geometry of the fight. To see the spaces between Nina's movements. To understand that her strength was not in her strikes but in her anticipation. She was used to being faster. Used to being smarter. Used to opponents who could not keep up. Draken kept up. Their exchange lasted nearly a minute, longer than any sparring session they had ever had. The crowd murmured. Vec watched with wide eyes. Ambassador Hayes had his hand over his mouth. Then Nina caught his leading leg. A familiar hook. A familiar push. Draken felt himself falling. But this time, he did not fight it. He rolled, the technique she had taught him in their first training session. Shoulder to the mat, momentum carrying him through, back to his feet before she could close the distance. The crowd gasped. Nina paused. Her eyebrows rose. Where did you learn that? She asked. You taught me. First week. Falling is not failure. She smiled. It was not her usual small smile. This was something else, something that looked almost like pride. Good, she said. Now show me what else you learned. They came together again. Draken's 4 arms moved in patterns he had drilled 1,000 times. Blocks, strikes, grapples. Nina's 2 arms answered each one. She was still faster. Still more precise. But the gap had narrowed. He landed a hit. A solid strike to her shoulder. She spun with it, using the momentum to reset her stance, but he had felt it connect. He had actually touched her. The crowd erupted. Quiet, Nina said without looking at them. The noise died instantly. She faced Draken again. Her expression was different now. No longer teaching, no longer guiding. For the first time, she looked at him like an equal. One more exchange, she said. Everything you have. Draken nodded. They attacked simultaneously. He threw everything he had, every technique, every lesson, every hour of pain and sweat and humility. His arms moved in combinations that would have been impossible 3 months ago. His footwork was grounded. His breathing was controlled. Nina met him blow for blow. Her speed was still greater, her precision still uncanny. But she was working now. Really working. He could see it in the slight furrow of her brow, the shift in her stance. She caught his wrist, the same wrist she had caught countless times before. He felt the familiar twist, the familiar pull toward the pressure point. And he blocked it. His lower left arm intercepted her strike. His upper right arm swept toward her midsection. She twisted away, but not fast enough. His hand brushed her side. Not a solid hit. Barely a touch. But it was contact. Nina stepped back. Draken stepped back. They stood 3 meters apart, both breathing hard. The crowd was absolutely silent. Nina looked down at where his hand had touched her uniform. Then she looked up at him. "Yield," she said. Draken stared. "What?" "I yield." She said it clearly, calmly. "You touched me. First contact goes to you. I yield." The silence broke. The crowd roared, not with the bloodthirsty excitement of the first fight, but with something else. Recognition. Respect. Draken did not know what to say. His 4 arms hung at his sides. His chest heaved. He had not won. He knew he had not won. She had let him touch her, not obviously, not deliberately, but she could have avoided it. She chose not to. "Why?" he asked. Nina walked toward him, stopping close enough that he could see the small scar above her eyebrow, the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. "Because you earned it," she said. 3 months ago, you could not touch me. Today you made me work. You made me adjust. You made me learn." She tilted her head. "That is the point, Commander. Not winning. Growing." She extended her hand. Draken looked at it. The same hand that had poked him into submission. The same hand that had pulled him off the floor a dozen times. The same hand that had taught him that strength was not about size or tradition. He took it. "Thank you," he said. "Thank me by training harder," she replied. "We are just getting started." 6 months after the rematch, Draken stood on the observation deck one last time. The human delegation was departing. Their mission complete. Their work, the real work, the building of something new, just beginning. "Well, Commander," Nina said, walking up to join him. "This is goodbye. For now." "For now," he agreed. "You going to be okay without us?" "I have your training protocols. I have your contact information. And I have," he paused, searching for the word, "understanding. That is a good start." They stood in silence, watching the stars. "Can I ask you something?" Draken said. "Sure. Are all humans like you?" Nina laughed. "No. Some are much worse. Some are much nicer. But we all have the same basic design flaw." "What is that?" "We do not know how to stop." She turned to face him. "Once we decide something matters, we keep going. No matter what. It is not always a good thing. Sometimes it gets us into trouble. Sometimes it gets us killed. But it is who we are." Draken nodded slowly. "Your species terrifies me." "Good." Nina smiled. Terrified species are polite species. She extended her hand one last time. He took it. "Same time next year?" she asked. "I would not miss it." She turned and walked toward her ship. At the airlock, she paused and looked back. "Oh, and Commander, the next time you challenge a human to prove their strength." "I will call someone first," he finished. "Medical attention, ego repair, complete re-evaluation of life choices." "See. You were paying attention." She stepped through the airlock. The doors closed. The ship detached and drifted toward the stars. Draken watched until it disappeared into the dark. "Sir." Vec approached carefully. "Are you all right?" "I am fine, Vec." Draken flexed all 4 arms. "Better than fine. I am learning." "Learning what, sir?" Draken turned away from the viewport, toward the gym where his training would continue, with or without the humans. "Everything," he said. "I am learning everything." 1 year later, the Galactic Council received a formal request from the Vexillian Empire. It proposed a permanent exchange program between Vexillian military forces and human security personnel. The request was approved unanimously. The first class of Vexillian warriors arrived at Earth 6 months after that. They came with open minds and closed mouths, ready to learn from the soft-skinned creatures who had somehow survived a death world and reached for the stars. They fell. They got up. They fell again. And somewhere, on a station at the edge of nowhere, a human security chief watched the reports and smiled. Progress, Nina Chan said to no one in particular. Not perfection. Progress. The floor was cold. The galaxy was vast. And somewhere out there, a four-armed warrior was teaching human techniques to his people. The last warning the Galactic Council ignored had become the first lesson they finally learned. Do not touch humans. Not because they are fragile. Because they get back up. Every single time. And they bring their friends with them. 1 year after the Vexillian exchange program began, a small ceremony was held on Station Meridian. Not a grand affair, no ambassadors, no council representatives, no press. Just warriors. Humans and Vexillians, standing together in the gymnasium where it had all started. The walls were lined with new equipment, designed to accommodate both species. The mats had been replaced 3 times from overuse. And on the far wall, someone had mounted a plaque. It read, "The floor is cold. Getting back up is warmer." Draken stood at the center of the room, all 4 arms clasped behind his back. He was older now, not in years, but in understanding. The arrogance that had once defined him had been replaced by something quieter. Confidence, not bluster. Respect, not assumption. Nina Chen stood beside him. She had been promoted, chief of security for the entire sector now, but she still found time to teach. To train. To remind her students that falling was not failure. Today, Draken announced to the gathered warriors, we honor a lesson. Not a victory. Not a battle. A lesson. He turned to Nina. 364 days ago, I stood in this room and challenged Officer Chen to prove her strength. She defeated me in 30 seconds with a single finger. I hit the floor. And she asked me a question. He paused, letting the memory settle. She asked, should I call someone? Not to mock me. Not to gloat. Because she was genuinely concerned that I might need help. The human warriors smiled. The Vexillians shifted uncomfortably, remembering their own first falls. That question, Draken continued, taught me more than any combat technique. It taught me that strength is not about never falling. It is about who helps you up afterwards. He extended his primary right arm toward Nina. She took it. The Vexillian Empire and the United Earth Security Service hereby affirm the joint training partnership. Not as allies against a common enemy. As friends. As equals. As people who have learned that the floor is cold, but we do not have to lie on it alone. The room applauded. Not the thunderous applause of a crowd, but the genuine appreciation of warriors who understood what this meant. Nina stepped forward. I have one more thing to add, she said. The room went quiet. Commander Draken challenged me because he thought size mattered. He thought tradition mattered. He thought 4 arms beat 2. She smiled. He was wrong. But he was also right, because he was willing to learn. And that, more than any punch or kick, is what makes a warrior. She turned to face the Vexillian trainees. Your commander hit the floor so that you would not have to. He took the humiliation so that you could take the lesson. Remember that. Honor that. And when you fall, because you will fall, get back up. That is the human way. That is the Vexillian way now. That is our way. The ceremony ended. The crowd dispersed, some to the gym, some to the mess hall, some to their ships. Draken and Nina stood alone by the observation window, watching the stars. I never thanked you properly, Draken said. For what? For not giving up on me. For seeing something worth teaching. Nina shrugged. I see it in everyone. Most people just do not want to do the work. I did not want to do the work. I wanted to be right. And now I want to be better. He looked at his 4 arms. I still have 4. You still have 2. But I no longer think that matters. It never did, Nina said. What matters is what you do with them. They stood in silence for a moment. A human shuttle docked in the distance, new trainees arriving. The cycle would continue. New warriors would fall. New lessons would be learned. Same time tomorrow? Draken asked. Nina shook her head. Not tomorrow. I have to go home. Earth. Family thing. My niece is graduating. Martial arts black belt. She smiled. She is terrifying. You would like her. I would like to meet her. Maybe someday. Nina extended her hand. Until then, Commander. Keep training. Keep falling. Keep getting up. Draken took her hand. Until then, Officer Chen. And thank you. For everything. She nodded once, turned, and walked toward the docking bay. Draken watched her go, this small, soft-skinned creature who had defeated him with a poke and then taught him how to be a warrior. He would miss her. But he understood now that missing someone was not weakness. It was proof that connection had been made. That respect had been earned. That friendship, unlikely, unexpected, unprecedented, had been built. The shuttle carrying Nina Chen departed Station Meridian at 1400 hours station time. Draken stood at the observation deck, all four arms folded, watching it disappear into the black. Vec approached cautiously. Sir, the new trainees are asking about the human training protocols. They want to know if the stories are true. What stories? That a human can defeat a Vexillian warrior with a single finger. Draken smiled. The stories are true. But that is not the point. What is the point, sir? Draken turned away from the window, toward the gym where the next generation of warriors was waiting. The point, he said, is that the human who defeated me then spent 6 months teaching me how to be better. She did not have to. She gained nothing from it. But she did it anyway. Because that is what humans do. He flexed all four arms and walked toward the training deck. Now come on. We have work to do. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of species who measured strength by size. But here, on a small station at the edge of nowhere, something new was being built. Warriors who fell. Warriors who rose. Warriors who understood that the floor was cold, but they did not have to lie on it alone. The lesson had been taught. The lesson had been learned. And somewhere, on a ship heading toward Earth, a human security chief smiled and closed her eyes. Progress, she said quietly. Not perfection. Progress. The stars watched. The station hummed. And the floor, as always, was cold. But getting back up? That was warm. That was everything. That was human. And now, it was Vexillian too.